Get into episode 100. So if you're coming in to watch this one live, guys, let us know. I'd be super stoked to have you with me here tonight. So, guys, how's the start to the week been? Tell me the story, guys. Make sure you say hi in the comments. I want to know who is actually watching this one. It's so good to know who the actual team is that's watching it, so I can kind of channel my voice. So who we got? We got a few boys and girls coming in live. So Terry, my main man, how are you, brother? Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, mate. Edo, what is going on, dude? I hope you're well, mate. It's good to see you in here, Edo. You've been a bit quiet lately, brother. All right, who else we got? We got hey from me and Amy Richards. So I'm guessing that's Christy. I'm not displaying your name there for some reason. G'day, mate, whoever that is. Guys, if your name isn't displaying, it's because we haven't authorized restream. So just jump up the top there and authorize restream so I can see who it is that's actually coming in to watch this one live. We're going to be getting started in this in just a moment, boys and girls. So we got Danny Troutman here as well. Hello, Danny. How are you, brother? I hope you're well. Billy, how are you, mate? I hope you are good. Christy's rubbing it in and saying 30 degrees here in Queensland. 100 balls deep. Yeah, you got it, Trav. It's a good one, mate. Hey, Stevie boy, how are you, mate? It's good to see. Yeah, if you're cooking dinner or doing your thing, that's all good. I'm very grateful to have your earbuds here this morning or this afternoon if you're on this side of the world. Hey, Jen, good morning to you all the way from the UK. Jen, how are you? Chris is here. Mate, stomping like a bastard at the moment, Chris. I love that so much. Hello, Rowan. How are you, mate? Good to see you in here too, brother. We got Bobby Gordon here. We got Youngie here. Oh, my God. We've even got Sammy Paris here. I do apologize. I forgot to put the restream link, guys, so it doesn't really matter. I know you're all here. I've got some support for you guys for episode 100. So I reckon we should just get stuck into the episode. What do you reckon? So guys, I think we're all set up to do this. So let's get started on this, hey? I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go. All right, on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and the unsustainable workout programs. And I'm super stoked. This is episode 100 of the podcast. Episode 100. So I looked back through the podcast player. The first episode was on May 12th, 2021. My goal was to get to 100 episodes inside 12 months. So according to my watch, we beat it by about 4 weeks by the look of it. So it's the 11th of April right now. So we snuck in by a month. So how good is that? Look, the podcast for me, guys, was it was a way to be able to push our message out to the masses. And at the moment, we get somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 downloads per month, which is pretty damn cool in terms of taking our belief around transformation out to the world. It was really cool because we had Raf, our first Brazilian client, joined the Better Body Academy last week. So we're going global. I love it so much. But I do want to thank you guys for all the support. And to those of you that have given the podcast a review, I appreciate that more than you know. I also just want to quickly thank all of the clients that have appeared on the podcast. For a lot of them, that was actually a goal of theirs to appear on the podcast. And if you really would like to appear on the podcast and you feel like you've got a story to tell, I would love to have you on. So shoot me a DM and sometime over the next 12 months, hopefully we can get you on here. So last week in Australia, we're down in Bondi. All the kind of celebration with family and meetups has kind of cooled down. And this is a really good place to be doing the episode because it's where we started off our trip a couple of months ago. And I want to just, I guess, thank again you, our Better Body Academy clients, for hosting, to a degree, Cords, Ocean, and I. We've had the best time while we've been here. But most importantly, the client day that we did was just sick. It was our favorite thing. And thank you so much to everyone who was able to come along. Yesterday, we did a small client day, which was very, very cool up at Saddles Restaurant at Mount White. To the boys who come along there, that was awesome as well. The support you give the Academy is awesome, and we're just doing our best to try to give the same thing back. Now, in today's episode, let's get started. What I wanted to do is an episode which is a bit of a deep dive into this idea of overcoming fear of failure and judgment. And the reason I want to do this episode is because I think that a lot of people inside and outside of the Academy are stuck. And this is the reason why I do this podcast, is to try to give people a little bit of inspiration to take the next step. And so it's not just the physical element, it's the mental element. Like, what does being stuck actually mean? What does that mean? Well, for me, it means that in life, there is always a gap between where we are at the moment and where we want to get to. And life in that gap is pretty normal because we're ambitious. We want to grow all of the time. But when we just stick on that side, the left-hand side of the gap for too long, it gets frustrating. And what tends to happen is we kind of get really frustrated that we feel like we know what to do, but we just can't get ourselves to do it. And so why is it that we can't motivate ourselves to do it? Our life kind of consumes us, right? And it feels like trying to get across that gap is almost a step too far. And I think a lot of us put it down to being stuck. If I asked you, why were you stuck or why are you stuck? You'd say things like, no, I have no time and I have no money and I don't have a gym and I've got no support. In other words, we externalize the reasons that we are stuck. But the truth is, well, certainly in my opinion, that we are lying to ourselves. We externalize them because that exonerates us of any responsibility. But the truth is, we're lying to ourselves. You don't need a gym to get healthy. You don't need 42 spare hours per week to train. And you don't need an endless amount of cash for clean eating, as an example. What you actually need is a burning desire for more. And going with that burning desire is the belief and the faith that you can do it. Notice these two things, guys. Belief and faith, they don't cost anything. They don't cost anything. They require actually very little time, belief and faith. And most importantly, belief and faith are internal to you. They're not to do with money or time. Belief and faith are internal to you. They're not dependent on anything else. Who here listening has read the book Think and Grow Rich? Give me a show of hands or a yes or a no in the comments. Think and Grow Rich is one of the all-time classics. And in the steps to amassing a huge amount of wealth, desire and faith are the first two steps. And although I'm not a relationship counselor, I also know that the desire to be in a beautiful relationship and faith and belief that you are deserved of a beautiful relationship are critical to you building an amazing relationship. So in any transformation, if you have no belief, if you have no faith, you can't blame externals. You can't put it out there. In listening to this episode, if we continue to blame externals, we're going to continue to get the same thing. What I want to try to do here is get you to acknowledge that it's lack of belief and faith in yourself that is holding you back. And then the question is, well, if it's lack of belief and lack of faith that we can do it that's holding us back, how can we overcome this? I think a good place to start is to actually ask, for you getting to the transformation that you want to get to, and you might have had some good success so far, or you may not have started yet. What is it that's actually standing in your way? Like, while you're doing the cooking, while you're hanging with the kids on the lounge, whatever it is, while you're watching this podcast or listening to this episode, what is it that's actually standing in your way? It is my belief that it's predominantly the fear of failing, the fear of judgment. Because if you were to overcome these fears, you would get unstuck and start making progress, right? In other words, if you gave 0 fucks and started moving forward and you overcome those fears, you'd be able to start making progress. You'd stop doubting yourself. I see many men particularly that put up these gigantic big ass walls. And the reason that they put up these gigantic big ass walls, and if you're a woman watching or listening to this podcast, I want you to kind of know that I understand what it's like to be with a man, that shelters and blocks things out, because I did it myself for a long period of time. And it's one of those masks of masculinity that we wear to try to preserve ourselves from getting hurt. That's why we do it. And so we block it out. We pretend that we're all tough and masculine, but the reality is a lot of us are really, really fearful inside. And to prove it to you, men, I'm going to ask you 2 simple questions to show you that this fear exists in you. If you're watching this, number 1, if I could give you a plan and I could absolutely guarantee you with my life that you will not fail in your transformation, that it would be simple, and that within 6 to 12 months you get to your goal weight, would you start going all in? If I told you there was no chance of failure, would you start going all in? 100% you would. Now, I'm not saying that that is the case. I'm asking, if we took away the potential to fail and said, you can't fail, now would you go all in? 100% you would. If I could guarantee you. And secondly, what if I told you that you could do this in the privacy of your own home or a bloody desert island where no one would ever know that you were trying to get healthy? And so, firstly, you can't fail. And secondly, no one would be judging you or watching you. So that would relieve all the pressure. Would you go all in on yourself? Yes, you would. And the reason is because you don't have to contend with the fear of failure and the fear of rejection or judgment. So we have this situation where you'd like to get healthy, but you don't believe in yourself enough to actually do it. Therefore, you won't try it because you're scared of failing and being judged and perhaps emasculated by others. In other words, getting judged and therefore taking away your status or bringing down the masculine wall that exists. Women, of course, experience the same fear. They experience the same fear. But I believe the nature of that fear is slightly different. It's more rejection and kind of criticism. And aside from knowing this, because I have the same fears myself around rejection, or had the same fears around rejection and social judgment and failing, I've spoken to countless successful men that have lost weight inside of Better Body Academy, transformed their entire lives. And the number one thing they said to me is that I just wish I started sooner, but I didn't start because I was scared of failing. And I don't even know that they understood the depth of what they meant by that. I'm scared of failing. They just had this fear that was prominent there. And later, when they'd succeeded, after going all in on themselves, they just wish they got started earlier. But at that point in time, they'd gotten to the point where they were embarrassed about their health. They didn't back themselves to follow through. They'd tried a million times with, man shake and keto and some reincarnation of a dumb diet. And with each failure, we effectively dug a deeper hole, and their self-belief got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then it got to that bottom point, and they tried to turn it round from there. One of our guys, Tez, says, that's exactly me. And so I've mentioned this a number of times on the podcast before of how I personally felt the same fears, okay? And failure and judgment about becoming a full-time health coach. I remember a pay rise conversation I had with my previous boss. I'm going to share some vulnerability with you guys here, where I essentially told him after a long period of time, I felt that a pay rise was well overdue. I was working too many hours to justify my current wage. And I said that I wouldn't leave if this pay rise wasn't put on accordingly. Now, in hindsight, I don't think that's the best way to go about getting a pay rise, but that's what I did at the time. I didn't get the pay rise. And when the push come to shove, I didn't back myself to quit and follow my dream of becoming a coach. And when I think about that in hindsight, why didn't I? Because I was scared of failure. I was scared of being looked at as stupid, of giving up a well-paying job, even though I was out of alignment. I was scared to give it up because of the judgment and the failure that could potentially happen. In fact, when I started becoming a coach and started posting on social media, I was scared about being judged. People messaging me saying stuff like, why are you posting this shit like you're some sort of authority? And of course, some of that actually come from my family. Jace, why are you posting all this private stuff about yourself? That's why are you doing that? And of course, when I started the podcast, I was scared of the judgment. I wanted to start a podcast for the previous 2 years, but I didn't because I was scared of failing. So what do we actually do to address this fear of failure, this fear of judgment? What can we actually do about it? Well, I think first, what we need to do is change our mindset about it in the first place and go from what's going to happen if I fail, or what's going to happen if I get criticized by others, to expecting it. When it happens multiple times, how am I going to choose to respond to failure and to judgment? Failure is an absolute necessary part of the course. It sharpens your sword. What frustrates the shit out of me is so many people are so good at saying that, and then they seem to live out of alignment with what they've just said. Oh, failure is part of the course. But they're not willing to fail. They're not willing to get uncomfortable themselves. They're good at making quotes, but how many people actually believe it? I am a failure at so many things, it's not funny. Like terrible failure. Even something as simple as, telling you guys about the importance of non-reactivity, then walking next door and reacting to my partner. I am a failure at YouTube. I look back at my initial videos and they are fucking horrendous. The fact that I coached for 6 years and earned a total of about $1,000 total selling ebooks. The fact that I put on my Tinder profile, I'm a health coach, but truthfully, I had 1 client. Now we've got close to 300. I just didn't want to be judged. And that's what it come down to. Ironically, that little white lie that I told on my Tinder profile nearly come back to bite me. Claudia wanted to be with someone who was entrepreneurial and free of structures like the 9 to 5. And so when she realized quite quickly after we dated that actually I was in a 9 to 5 job, more like a 7 to 10 o'clock job, that wasn't very flexible. And that nearly brought about our failure. In fact, it was the kick in the ass that I needed to go out and become a coach. Our society, guys, look, it rejects failure. It judges so much, and this has been the case for years, for centuries. From all the way back to the Wright brothers, trying to fly their planes and getting ridiculed because they kept crashing, to more recently with someone like Steve Jobs. Can you imagine what it was like for Steve Jobs back in, I think it was probably early 2000s, maybe 2005, 2006, when he said, I'm going to take this and I'm going to send a photo of myself and I'm going to send it to the guy on the other side of the room. Can you imagine the ridicule that he would have gone through? It just would have been mind-blowingly ridiculing. And now that's just second nature. How often do we sit on the couch drinking beer, throwing shit at our favorite sports people while they earn $500,000 to $1 gazillion a year and we scrape by trying to make ends meet? And we sit there on the couch throwing shit at them. There is a real dark side to success. It seems when you start achieving things that you set out to do, everyone wants to chip you. Actually, that's what happens. Everyone wants to chip you. Everyone wants to say, the ones that were clapping at the start end up becoming your detractors. Why does that actually happen? Like, why do people that were cheering for you at the start to become your detractors? It's because when you start to succeed, you start to threaten to leave the bunch. And often those detractors are your family, which makes it very bloody hard to stomach. And by leaving the bunch, by leaving the crowd and go in a direction that fulfills your potential, you're effectively causing them to feel left behind. That is where the judgment comes from. Because if you move away and start to chase your dreams, your dream body, your dream life, your dream partnership, your dream job, all of a sudden, you leave a crowd behind. This is the reason why a community is so damn important. If you are not surrounded by people in your immediate surrounds, men and women that pick you up and teach you things, you are going to be infinitely less likely to succeed. Infinitely less likely. So in moving through this fear and this fear of judgment and failure that we have, I think it helps to know that everyone in the room feels the same fear. You see, when we're gripped by the fear of judgment, when we're gripped by the fear of failure, we tend to think that it's just us. I've spoken previously how I used to get super nervous before parties because I felt judged. I know that a lot of you guys feel super intimidated about the concept of walking into a gym because you feel like you're being judged, like you don't fit in. It was probably not until my 30s that I actually started to realize that at gatherings, it's kind of like a puppet show. The real people are the hands, right? And the surface level at the party is people putting on the side that they think is most socially acceptable. So at a gathering or a barbecue, you effectively have a hand puppet show going on. It's people putting on their best side, trying to make sure that they don't get judged, they look the best that they can. It's ingenuine, and I actually think this is the reason why drugs and booze are so prevalent in our society, because we need to try to bring down the walls for us to actually allow ourselves to feel relaxed. I can remember, check this out, I can remember going away to overnight work trips in my old job where I'd need to stay away for a night and I'd have to go to the pub because I was staying in a hotel room with no kitchen, and I have to go to the pub and eat by myself. Has anyone ever had this fear of eating by yourself? I was so terrified about going to the pub and having dinner alone. I could almost feel these protruding voices from the other side of the room, the guys in the TAB, looking, thinking, look at this fucking Nigel no friends over in the corner. Of course, I created that in my brain. Now, I would love nothing more than to be able to go and have dinner by myself in peace with a beautiful meal once a week. It's funny how things shift over time when your awareness starts to cotton on to the fear being learned. Do you notice, guys, that the majority of this discussion has focused around not what you've got to do and more about reframing the fear of judgment or reframing the failure? It's actually not, these are the 17 things that you've got to do. It's actually, you have to think about the failure in judgment in the right way. You need to shine some awareness on it and look at it for what it is. Practically, we should know that most fears that we have are learned, okay? And often they're linked to some previous trauma that we've had in our life. The good news is, if you've learned a fear, you can unlearn a fear. And I know this firsthand because I learned to be tremendously petrified of skydiving and heights, and I went skydiving. It's kind of like how you can put on weight and you can learn to take the weight back off again. You can unlearn the fear. If you have a fear of rejection or a fear of failure or a fear of judgment, then the simplest way to start overcoming it is to work on being more vulnerable. If you're inside the BBA, that means becoming a bit more consistent in our group. That means bringing down the walls and start documenting your journey a little bit. Talking about the struggles you're going through, celebrating the wins when you have them. And if you're not in the BBA, you need to do one of two things. You need to join the bloody BBA and get off the fence, or start at least getting yourself into a community where with a group you can collectively move towards the fear and desensitize to it instead of running the other way. Guys, I'm bringing this episode to a close. I went to a funeral on the weekend. It was for the mum of one of my very close and actually oldest friends, and rest her soul. Every single time I'm at a funeral, I have the same thoughts. I don't know if this is like unique to me or everyone has these thoughts. I just think, man, like, life is so fucking short. It's crazy that we hold back on living an amazing life because we're scared. And it's not even that we're scared of ourselves. We're scared of other people judging us and failing and looking, inverted commas, silly in front of other people. Imagine a society which was flipped on its head. Imagine a society where failure was embraced and fucking up was seen as awesome for growth. Like you went and high-fived your mate when he ate shit. Dudette, if you're watching this episode and listening and any part of you is not being wholly and fully authentic on yourself because you're scared of what someone else might say about you or falling on your knees in front of someone else, you are doing yourself, your family, and this world a disservice. Stop fabricating these kind of stories about you not being capable. You are. You just need to build. It starts with desire, and then it comes along by building self-belief and faith. How do you do that? At a really base level, how do you do that? By saying you're going to do something small and following through and doing it. Saying you're going to do something small and following through and doing it. How do you build a fantastic relationship? You say to your partner, I'm going to do this thing, and then you do it. How do you fuck up a relationship? By telling your partner you're going to do this thing and continually not doing it. You need to think of the relationship with your partner as a relationship with yourself. If you stop paying attention to the noise around you and start asking yourself, rather than waking up every morning and just pressing play and then your day happens to you, start actually recognizing that jumping in the driver's seat prevents you from being a victim. And I come at this from a position of like desperation that if one person listening to this podcast live or on replay can understand that the fear that they have created around being judged and being and failing. And it's interesting, and I don't usually go on kind of tangents like this, but one of my boys, John Timmons, has just joined this podcast episode. And you guys know this guy's story. 135 kilograms, feeling fucking shit, never had a girlfriend, was tired walking to the shops. Yesterday, John just completed his first triathlon. That's after what I think is now 3 marathons. I don't want to shortchange him. How else do you quantify that being possible? The only way is if you stop worrying about what other people think and start just backing yourself. Start believing in yourself and not asking, when I fail, what am I going to do? Say, I expect to fail. It's going to happen. I'm going to eat shit countless amounts of time, and then I'm just going to get back up again. Just prepare for the get up rather than be surprised by the knockdown. Guys, hopefully this episode has felt empowering for you guys and given a little bit of a butt kick to a couple of people. This has been episode 100 of the Better Body Academy podcast. Again, guys, this is the podcast that you come to when you're sick of the dumb diets, the unsustainable workout programs, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast.